Hello, and welcome back. Tonight, we leave behind the whispers of the Senate and the shadows of the palace. We are not here to talk of politics or curses. Instead, we are traveling to the sun-baked edge of the city, to a place of sweat, sand, and blood. We are here to explore the world of the gladiator, but we will do so slowly, quietly. We will look past the myth and the spectacle to find the men beneath the helmets. This is their story, told not with the roar of a crowd, but as a gentle hum, hopefully just enough to guide you into a peaceful rest.
Our story begins not in the Colosseum, not under the gaze of 50,000 screaming spectators, but in the gray, pre-dawn chill of a place far less glamorous. It is a Ludus, a gladiatorial school. The first thing you notice is the smell. It's a thick, earthy mixture of damp sawdust, sweat, stale cooking fire, and the faint, metallic tang of old blood that has seeped too deep into the soil to ever be washed away. The first sounds are not of trumpets, but of a rhythmic, monotonous thudding. It is the sound of men, already awake, practicing with weighted wooden swords, the rudis, their movements sluggish in the cold morning air. You hear the grunts of exertion, the low murmur of different languages, and the rhythmic scraping of shovels as lower-ranked trainees muck out the barracks. This is the factory floor of Rome's greatest entertainment industry. It is a prison, a military academy, and a high-stakes business venture, all contained within a single-walled compound. The men here are not yet legends. They are not the icons on mosaics or the heroes of epic poems. They are investments. They are raw material. They are a collection of broken lives and desperate hopes about to be forged into something that can bleed and fight and die for the pleasure of others. Forget the shining armor and the roar of the crowd. The reality of the gladiator begins here, in the mud and the morning chill.
Presiding over this strange kingdom of scars is a figure known as the lanista. In the social hierarchy of Rome, there are few men more reviled. A lanista was a businessman, but his business was human flesh. He was a speculator, but his assets were living, breathing men. He was seen as a ghoul, a pimp of death, a man who profited from the lowest dregs of society. Senators would curl their lips in disdain at the mention of his name. Yet those same senators would send their agents to him, purses heavy with coin, to hire his finest fighters for the next games. The lanista was a paradox, a social outcast who was an indispensable cog in the machinery of Roman entertainment and politics. We can imagine him standing on a covered veranda, overlooking the training yard. He is not a muscle-bound warrior himself. He is more likely a shrewd accountant, his eyes constantly calculating the value of his stock. He sees the new recruit from Gaul, tall and strong, and thinks of the price he can command. He sees a veteran fighter nursing a wounded knee and weighs the cost of the doctor against the man's declining worth. Every bowl of barley porridge is an expense, every new piece of armor a capital investment. His world is one of brutally simple arithmetic. He buys men, trains them, and rents them out to die. If they survive, their value increases. If they die, he collects a handsome insurance fee from the game's sponsor. For the lanista, compassion is a liability, sentiment is a flaw. There is only the cold, hard logic of the balance sheet.
Who are these men that the lanista surveys? Let us first imagine the unwilling recruit. Picture a forest in Germania, shrouded in mist. A warrior, a man who has known nothing but loyalty to his tribe and the freedom of the hunt, is overwhelmed in a skirmish with a Roman legion. He is chained,
marched for weeks across lands he has never seen, and sold as a prisoner of war. He arrives at the Ludus in a state of profound shock and despair. The language is foreign, the food is alien, the air is thick with the humidity of a climate he is not used to. He is stripped of his name and given a new one, something simple, perhaps even mocking. He is pushed into a cramped shared cell with men from Africa, from Britain, from Syria, other broken warriors who share nothing but their grim fate. His long hair, a mark of his status as a free warrior in his homeland, is shorn. He is handed a wooden sword and pointed towards the training posts. This man does not dream of glory in the arena. He does not care about the roar of the crowd. His training is driven by the simple, brutal instinct to survive. He learns because the alternative is a savage beating from the doctores, the trainers. He fights because a moment's hesitation will mean death. For him, the Ludus is not a school of opportunity. It is the final, agonizing chapter in a life that was stolen from him, a living nightmare from which there is no waking.
But not all who entered the Ludus were dragged there in chains. Perhaps even more strangely, men would volunteer. These were the octorati, free Roman citizens who chose to become gladiators. Imagine a different scene. A small, stuffy office, smelling of old papyrus. A young man, perhaps a farmer whose land has failed, or a former soldier deep in gambling debt, stands before the lanista. He is here to sign the contract, the octoramentum. This is a formal, legal document. With his signature, he agrees to surrender his rights as a citizen. He agrees to be treated as a slave. He can be beaten, branded, chained, and of course, killed, all at the discretion of his new master. Why would anyone do this? For the signing bonus, first and foremost. A substantial sum of money paid up front, enough to settle his debts or provide for his family. And for the dream of fame, of adoration, of becoming a household name. He has seen the graffiti on the city walls praising famous gladiators. He has seen the way women look at the champions. He tells himself he is different from the barbarian prisoners. He is a volunteer. He has skill. He will be one of the lucky ones, one of the survivors who walks away rich and famous. He takes the stylus, dips it in the ink, and with a flourish signs his freedom away. He has traded his life for a lottery ticket, and the price of entry is his own body. It's a transaction that speaks volumes about the Roman obsession with glory, where some would rather risk a spectacular death than endure a quiet life of poverty and obscurity. Whether a volunteer or a prisoner, the moment of entry into this world was sealed with an oath. It was a terrifyingly simple and direct piece of language that every recruit had to swear. Standing before the lanista and his trainers, the new gladiator would utter the words that defined his new existence. Uri, vinciri, verbarari, feroque nacari. Let us pause and feel the weight of that phrase. First, uri, to be burned. This referred to the branding iron, the mark of the lanista's ownership that would be seared into his flesh, a permanent reminder that he was no longer a person, but property. It was the mark of livestock. Next, vinciri, to be bound. The acceptance that he could be chained at any time, for any reason, for discipline, for transport, or simply because his master willed it. His physical freedom was utterly gone. Then, verbarari, to be beaten. This was an acceptance of the brutal discipline of the Ludus. Any infraction, any sign of cowardice or laziness would be met with the whip. Pain was now a tool to be used upon him. And finally, the terrible conclusion, feroque nacari, and to be killed by the sword. This was the core of the contract.
He formally accepted the possibility, even the probability, of a violent death in the arena. He was relinquishing his right to life itself. Swearing this oath was the true point of no return. It was a psychological severing from one's old life. With these words, a man ceased to be a farmer, a soldier, or a tribesman. He became, in body and in soul, a gladiator.
With the oath sworn, the transformation began. And it started, as most days do, with breakfast. The diet of a gladiator is one of the most fascinating and misunderstood aspects of their lives. If you picture these men as having the lean, chiseled physiques of modern bodybuilders, you would be mistaken. The goal of the lanista was not to create perfectly sculpted statues, but to build effective and durable fighters. The diet was designed for this specific purpose. The gladiators were nicknamed hordiari, or barley men. Their daily meal, the sagina, was a thick, heavy porridge, a mash of barley, wheat, oats, and beans. It was incredibly high in carbohydrates and low in protein. It was, by all accounts, bland, monotonous, and filling. But it was effective. This carb-heavy diet was designed to do two things. First, it provided immense energy for the grueling, day-long training sessions. Second, and more subtly, it built up a layer of subcutaneous fat over the gladiators' muscles. This might seem counterintuitive, but it was a crucial element of the spectacle. This layer of fat provided protection. It could absorb superficial cuts and slashes that would otherwise incapacitate a leaner man. A wound would look bloody and dramatic for the crowd, but it wouldn't necessarily end the fight. It prolonged the show. So we must imagine our new recruit sitting on a rough-hewn bench in the communal mess hall, forcing down another bowl of tasteless gray mush. It is another piece of the myth being stripped away. A gladiator was not fueled by wine and roasted meat, but by the same humble grains that fed the cattle in the fields. It was fuel, not food.
After the morning meal, the real work begins. The heart of the training yard is not a gleaming gymnasium, but a collection of simple wooden stakes driven deep into the earth. This is the palace, and it is the first and most important opponent a new gladiator will ever face. Each man is assigned a post, roughly the height of a person, and here he will spend countless hours, day after day. The equipment for this stage is deliberately punishing. The practice sword, the Ludus, is made of heavy wood and is often twice the weight of the steel weapon he will eventually use in the arena. The shield is made of wicker, also heavier and more cumbersome than its battle-ready counterpart. The philosophy is simple: train in difficult conditions, and the reality of the arena will feel easy by comparison. So you must picture the scene: 100 men standing before 100 wooden posts, moving through their drills in a state of exhausted, hypnotic repetition. The doctores, the trainers, walk the lines, their voices barking corrections. Lunge, parry, block, strike, over and over. The weighted sword makes the shoulder burn. The heavy shield strains the arm. It is not about learning fancy moves. It is about building muscle memory, about making the sword an extension of the arm, about turning the fighter's body into an unthinking machine of violence. This is where the foundation of a gladiator is built, not with cleverness, but with sweat and splinters. The men who oversee this brutal education are the doctores. These are not gentle instructors. They are often ex-gladiators themselves, men who were skilled or lucky enough to have survived their contracts and won their freedom. They are grizzled veterans, their bodies a roadmap of old scars, each one a testament to a lesson learned in blood. They have seen everything the arena has to offer, and their job is to impart that savage knowledge to the new generation. Their teaching methods are as direct and brutal as the world they come from. A clumsy parry is met not with a helpful correction, but with a sharp crack from the trainer's whip across the offender's back. A moment of laziness results in a public humiliation or a stint on cleaning duty. They are breaking the recruits down, stripping them of their civilian softness or their unstructured barbarian rage, and rebuilding them in the precise image the arena demands. There is a doctor for each fighting style, a doctor trishularum for the trident-wielding retiarius, a doctor secutorum for the heavily armed secutor, and so on. They are masters of their specific craft, and they command a mixture of terror and absolute respect from the trainees. To displease them is to invite pain. To learn from them, to truly absorb their lessons on footwork, timing, and how to read an opponent's eyes is to marginally increase one's own chances of survival. They are not trying to be liked, they are trying to protect the Lanista's investment.
As a trainee proves his basic competence on the wooden post, he is assessed. The Lanista and his doctores will study his physique, his temperament, and his natural aptitude. Is he fast and nimble? Is he powerful and unflinching? Based on this assessment, he will be assigned a specialization. A gladiator was not a generic swordsman. He was a highly specific type of performer, trained to fight in a particular style with a particular set of equipment. This was show business after all, and the key to a good show is a compelling matchup. The system was built on deliberate imbalances, creating a rock-paper-scissors dynamic of thrilling contrasts. The most famous of these pairings was the retiarius versus the secutor. The retiarius, or net man, was the picture of agility. He fought almost naked, protected only by a shoulder guard, the galeras, and a padded arm guard, the manica. His weapons were those of a fisherman: a weighted net to entangle his opponent, a long trident to keep him at a distance, and a small dagger for close quarters work. He was fast, but incredibly vulnerable.
Within this brutal system, a strange and contradictory social world began to form. These men, who were legally dead and treated like animals, formed intense bonds with one another. They lived together, ate together, trained together, and bled together. They were a brotherhood of the damned, a society of men living on the edge of death. And this shared fate created a powerful sense of camaraderie. We can still hear their voices today, through the graffiti they scribbled on the walls of the barracks and places like Pompeii. Salatus, the Thracian, the sigh of the girls, one boasts. Crescens, the net fighter, holds the hearts of the ladies, reads another. They brag about their victories, their fame, their romantic conquests. It is a poignant reminder that beneath the grim reality, they were still young men, full of ego and a desperate desire to be seen, to be remembered as more than just a number on the Lanista's ledger. Yet, this brotherhood was founded on a terrifying premise. The man you shared your morning porridge with, the one who helped you bind your wounds after training, could very well be the man you were ordered to kill in the arena next week. Imagine the psychological toll. To form a friendship, a genuine human connection, in a place where that very connection might be severed by your own hand for the entertainment of a crowd. It is perhaps the cruelest aspect of the gladiator's life, the search for humanity in a system designed to strip it all away.
The morning of the games breaks differently over Rome. There is a charge in the air, a current of excitement that hums beneath the usual city sounds. For many, it is a public holiday, a day of state-sponsored leisure. From the smoky kitchens of the tenement blocks to the airy villas on the Palatine Hill, a single destination is on everyone's mind. Today, there will be blood.
You join the river of people flowing through the streets. The day is already warm, and vendors are doing a roaring trade, selling everything from cheap sausages and wine to sun cushions and little clay figurines of famous gladiators. The crowd is a perfect cross-section of the empire. Wealthy senators carried in litters by sweating slaves, merchants arguing loudly, families with children in tow, soldiers on leave, and women chattering excitedly amongst themselves. There is a festive, almost carnival-like atmosphere to it all. It is easy to forget, amidst the laughter and the commerce, the true purpose of this great migration. As you draw closer, the destination reveals itself, rising above the rooftops. It is the amphitheater, a colossal man-made mountain of stone and arches. The sound of the crowd, which was a low murmur in the distance, now grows into a deafening, constant roar, an ocean of human noise that seems to make the very air vibrate. This is the heart to which all the arteries of the city are flowing, a temple dedicated to the gods of spectacle and violent death.
Before you even enter, the building itself is designed to intimidate and impress. Whether it is the great Flavian amphitheater in Rome, the Colosseum, or a smaller arena in a provincial town, the effect is the same. It is a statement of power, a testament to Roman engineering and their obsession with grand-scale entertainment. The sheer size of it is hard to comprehend, an elliptical wall of stone that seems to kiss the sky, promising a world of wonder and horror within. You approach one of the dozens of numbered arches at the base. These entrances are called vomitoria, a name that perfectly captures their function. They are not named for sickness, but for the way they are designed to spew forth the massive crowds with breathtaking efficiency. The Romans, ever the masters of logistics, could fill and empty a venue seating 50,000 people in a matter of minutes. There is a certain dark irony in the fact that they applied the same ruthless efficiency to crowd control as they did to conquering nations. You find the archway that matches the number on your ticket, a small clay token called a tessera. You are guided by attendants through a series of cool, dark passageways that slope gently upwards. The roar of the crowd grows louder, more distinct. You can hear the blare of trumpets and the cries of thousands. You are moving through the building's very bowels, about to be disgorged into the light.
Stepping from the dim corridor into the arena proper is a physical shock. You are hit by a wall of sound and dazzling sunlight. The view is overwhelming. Below you stretches the vast oval of the arena floor, the arena, its sand a pristine pale yellow. Surrounding it on all sides are the tiered seats of the cavea, a dizzying, seemingly infinite sea of people. You find your place, and in doing so, you find your place in Rome itself. The seating is a perfect mirror of the rigid social hierarchy. Down at the very bottom, on marble thrones with the best views, sit the emperor, the Vestal virgins, and the senators. Above them sit the equestrian class, the wealthy businessmen. Higher still are the ordinary male citizens, the plebs, clad in their white togas. And at the very top, in the nosebleed section with the worst views, sit the women, the poor, and the slaves. From the highest seat to the lowest, the entire world is here, and all eyes are fixed on one place. The show begins not with gladiators, but with the venationes, the wild animal hunts. A hush falls, then a collective gasp as trapdoors in the arena floor fly open. From the darkness below, strange and exotic creatures are lifted into the blinding sun. Ostriches from Africa, bears from the mountains of Caledonia, stags with enormous antlers. The sand is dotted with rocks and trees, hastily erected to create the illusion of a natural landscape. The morning's bloody theater is about to begin.
The men who fight these beasts are called bestiari. They are not typically afforded the same status or training as the gladiators who will appear later. Often, they are simply condemned criminals or prisoners of war given a spear and a slim chance at survival against a creature they have never seen before. Theirs is a dangerous but less prestigious form of combat. The real stars of the morning show are the animals themselves. The sheer variety of creatures on display was a direct advertisement for the reach and power of the Roman Empire. Every corner of the known world was plundered for its most ferocious and exotic wildlife. Ships would arrive at the port of Ostia laden with caged terror. Lions from Syria, tigers from Parthia, rhinos and hippos from the Nile, crocodiles from Egypt, leopards from North Africa. These were creatures of myth and legend to the average Roman, and to see them in the flesh was a breathtaking spectacle. Imagine the scene. A pack of hunting dogs is released to harry a massive bear. A team of bestiari with long spears works together to bring down a raging bull. In some of the more extravagant games, different animals were pitted against each other, a bear against a bull or a lion against a tiger, to see which was the superior predator. It was a chaotic, bloody, and incredibly expensive display, a testament to Rome's ability to capture and dominate not just humanity, but the natural world itself.
As the morning's hunts conclude, and the sand is raked clean of blood and carcasses, a strange lull falls upon the arena. This is the midday hour, the time for lunch, but the show does not stop. In fact, for those with a strong stomach, the most grotesque part of the day is just beginning. This is the time for the noxia, the public execution of criminals. There is no pretense of sport here. This is raw, state-sanctioned punishment, served up as lunchtime entertainment. The crowd munches on bread, cheese, and olives, their conversations barely pausing as the condemned are led out onto the sand. The methods of execution vary. Some are simple and grim. The unlucky might face damnatio ad bestias, being tied to stakes and devoured by the half-starved animals left over from the morning's hunt. Crucifixion was also a common sight, a slow and agonizing death reserved for the lowest classes of criminals. But for a truly special show, the Romans indulged in what can only be called fatal charades. Condemned criminals were forced to act out scenes from mythology that ended in their own very real deaths. A man might be dressed as the legendary hero Mucius Scaevola and forced to hold his hand in a fire until he burns to death. Another, playing the part of Hercules, is placed on a funeral pyre and burned alive. Perhaps the most famous was the myth of Icarus, where a criminal, fitted with useless wings, would be flung from a great height to his death on the arena floor. It was a uniquely Roman form of cruelty, blending high culture with base brutality, and the crowd loved every moment of it.
The grim quiet of the midday executions is shattered by the blast of a horn. The mood in the amphitheater shifts instantly from morbid observation to giddy excitement. This is the moment everyone has been waiting for. The afternoon belongs to the gladiators. The grand procession, the pompa, begins. Led by lictors carrying the ceremonial bundles of rods and axes, a parade of officials, priests, and musicians enters the arena, circling the sand to the sound of trumpets, flutes, and water organs. Then they appear. The gladiators themselves stride into the light, not in their functional fighting gear, but in magnificent, ornate parade armor. These are robes of purple and gold, intricately embossed helmets that are works of art in themselves, designed to dazzle the crowd and build the anticipation. They walk with a practiced swagger, projecting an aura of confidence and power. They are the stars of the show, and this is their red carpet. They circle the arena, acknowledging the roaring crowd, their names being shouted from all sections of the cavea. As they pass the emperor's box or the magistrate sponsoring the games, they are said to have raised their right arm in salute and uttered the most famous phrase in the gladiatorial world: Ave, Imperator, moricere te salutant. Hail, Emperor! We who are about to die salute you. It is a line dripping with tragic grandeur and fatalism. Interestingly, historians note this phrase is only recorded once, during a specific event hosted by the Emperor Claudius, so it was likely not a standard daily greeting. But it was too good a line to be lost to history. It perfectly captured the grim bargain of the gladiator's life and has defined their legacy in our imagination ever since.
Once the procession is complete, the gladiators retreat to prepare. The crowd's excitement is now at a fever pitch. To whet their appetite further, the preliminary event often took place, the Prolutio. The fighters would emerge again, this time in their training gear, and engage in mock combat with blunted or wooden weapons. It was a chance for them to warm up, to show off their skills, and for the crowd to assess the day's combatants, perhaps adjusting their bets. Then, a final trumpet blast signals the end of the preliminaries. The wooden swords are cast aside. Servants run out onto the sand, carrying the real weapons, sharpened steel, lethally honed. The air in the arena changes again. The playful energy of the mock fights vanishes, replaced by a tense, electric silence. The first pair of gladiators is chosen. They walk to the center of the arena, their real helmets now fastened, their shields held ready. Two figures, known as the Summa Ludus and his assistant, take their positions nearby. These are the referees, often retired gladiators themselves, identifiable by the long wooden staffs they carry. Their job is to ensure a fair fight according to the specific rules of the matchup, to separate fighters if they become locked in a stalemate, and to be the first to recognize a legitimate sign of submission. This is not to be a chaotic brawl, it is a deadly but regulated martial contest. The two fighters salute each other, the referee gives the signal, and the first fight of the afternoon begins.
Let us imagine that first pairing. It is the classic matchup, the one we prepared for back in the Ludus. On one side stands the retiarius, the netman. He is a picture of speed, his body almost bare, relying on pure agility. In his left hand, he holds the long, three-pronged trident. In his right, the weighted coils of his net. He is constantly moving, circling, light on his feet, his eyes searching for the perfect moment to strike. He is the fisherman, and he is hunting for a very dangerous fish. On the other side stands the secutor, the pursuer. He is a wall of metal and muscle. His large rectangular shield covers most of his body, and his short sword is held ready to stab and thrust. His smooth, menacing helmet, with its tiny eye slits, is angled down, making him look like some kind of predatory shark. He cannot move quickly, and his vision is severely restricted. His strategy is to advance relentlessly, to cut off the arena, to corner the nimble Retiarius and turn the fight from a dance into a suffocating close-quarters brawl. The fight begins as a tense dance. The Retiarius feints with his trident, trying to draw a reaction to create an opening. The Secutor, patient and disciplined, keeps his shield high and advances step by methodical step, forcing the netman backwards. The crowd is utterly silent, mesmerized by the unfolding drama. The Retiarius knows he only has 1 or 2 good throws with the net. He must make it count. The Secutor knows he only needs to land 1 solid blow. The tension stretches thin and tight across the sun-drenched sand.
The moment comes. The Retiarius sees an opening. With a flick of his wrist, he sends the net flying through the air. The crowd lets out a collective gasp, but the Secutor, anticipating the move, drops his body low, and the net sails harmlessly over his shoulder, landing in a useless heap on the sand. It is a critical error. The Retiarius is now armed only with his trident, his greatest weapon lost. The dynamic of the fight changes instantly. The Secutor seizes the advantage. No longer needing to worry about the net, he charges forward with a speed and aggression he had been holding in reserve. The fight becomes a desperate flurry of blows. The Retiarius uses the long reach of his trident to keep the pursuer at bay, the metal prongs scraping and screeching against the Secutor's helmet and shield. But he is constantly backpedaling, giving up ground. He stumbles on the uneven sand. It is the only opening the Secutor needs. He lunges, his shield slamming into the netman's chest, knocking him off balance. Before the Retiarius can recover, the Secutor's sword flashes out, inflicting a deep, disabling gash in his thigh. The Retiarius cries out in pain and collapses to one knee. The fight is over. He has been defeated. Knowing he cannot continue, he drops his trident, looks to the victor, and raises the index finger of his left hand. It is the universal signal of submission, a formal plea for his life.
The referee immediately steps between the 2 men. The Secutor, panting in his hot helmet, stands back, a triumphant figure looking out at the roaring crowd. And what a roar it is! 50,000 voices scream their judgment. Some, perhaps admiring the Retiarius's brave fight, shout, "Missa, let him go," waving their handkerchiefs as a sign of mercy. Others, hungry for a kill, bellow, "Ugula, cut his throat," their fists clenched in excitement. It is a deafening, chaotic referendum on one man's life. The final decision rests with the editor, the sponsor of the games. He stands from his seat of honor, looking out at the crowd, then at the 2 men on the sand. This is a political calculation. A popular gladiator might be spared to please his fans. A fighter who fought poorly or seemed cowardly would almost certainly be condemned. The editor gauges the mood of the masses. He gives the signal. This is the moment of the famous pollice verso, the turned thumb. For centuries, we have believed this to be a simple thumbs up for life, thumbs down for death. But many historians now believe the gesture was different. A closed fist with the thumb pressed down might have meant mercy, symbolizing a sheathed sword. The signal for death, they argue, was a thumb pointed up, jabbing towards the sky like a drawn sword. The editor makes his choice. Let us say, today the crowd is bloodthirsty. He gives the fatal sign. The defeated Retiarius knows his plea has been denied. He is expected to accept his fate with dignity. He may even kneel and grasp the thigh of the victor, steadying himself for the final blow. The Secutor steps forward,
places the point of his gladius on the man's neck or shoulder blade, and delivers a quick, professional death. The crowd erupts. A life has ended, and the games continue.
The roar of the crowd is a wave that crests and then begins to recede. On the sand, a life has been extinguished. The show, for a brief moment, pauses for a grim piece of ritual theater. Attendants walk out onto the arena floor. One is dressed as Charon, the mythical ferryman of the underworld. He carries a large hammer with which he may ceremonially tap the head of the fallen gladiator to ensure he is truly dead. Another attendant, dressed as the messenger god Mercury, touches the body with a wand that has been heated in a fire, a final, morbid test for any sign of life. Once death is confirmed, the body is loaded onto a stretcher and carried out through a specific gate known as the Porta Libertinaria, named after the Roman goddess of death and burial. As soon as the body is gone, other attendants move in swiftly. They sprinkle fresh sand over the bloodstain, erasing the evidence of what just happened, preparing the stage for the next act. The crowd's attention is already on the next pair of fighters preparing to enter. But we do not stay with the crowd. Our focus is on the victor, the secutor, as he walks away from the blinding sun of the arena and back into the cool, dark corridors beneath the stands. The noise of the crowd fades behind him, replaced by the echo of his own footsteps and the sound of his own ragged breathing inside his helmet. The adrenaline that fueled him begins to drain away, leaving behind a profound exhaustion and the dull, throbbing ache of his own wounds. The fight is over. The work of survival begins.
He returns to the gladiators' quarters, a place of controlled chaos. The air is thick with the smells of sweat, fear, and the sharp, clean scent of medicinal herbs. Here, there are no cheering crowds. The atmosphere is tense and professional. In one corner, doctors are stitching up a wound on another fighter who was granted mercy. In another, a pair of gladiators, due to fight next, are performing last-minute checks on their equipment, their faces grim and unreadable. Our victor removes his heavy, suffocating helmet, and the sounds of the room become clear. He is greeted not with celebration, but with quiet, professional nods from his fellow fighters. He has done his job, he has survived. An attendant helps him out of his armor, while another brings water. Then comes the reason for it all. An official from the game's sponsor approaches him. First, he is presented with the victor's palm frond, a symbolic token of his victory. Then a laurel crown might be placed on his head. But the most important prize is last. A purse, heavy with coins, is placed into his hand. He can feel the weight of it, the cold, hard reality of the silver. Each coin is a validation of his skill, a tangible reward for the life he just took on the sand. This is the currency of his world, purchased with blood and measured in heartbeats.
This prize money and the fame that came with it created one of the great paradoxes of Roman society. Legally, every gladiator was classified as infamous. This was a technical term for a person of disgraced status, stripped of many of the rights and protections of a Roman citizen. They were legally on par with prostitutes, actors, and pimps, the lowest of the low, dishonorable and socially outcast. A senator would never invite a gladiator to dinner. And yet, in the popular imagination, these same men were superstars. They were the most famous people in the empire after the emperor himself. Their likenesses were everywhere.
Archaeologists have found oil lamps molded with the faces of famous fighters, intricate floor mosaics depicting their greatest victories, and countless pieces of pottery decorated with their images. Children played with clay or wooden figurines of gladiators, just as children today play with action figures of their favorite athletes. This fame extended into a strange kind of celebrity sex appeal. They were seen as symbols of ultimate masculinity, and the danger that surrounded them only enhanced their allure. We know from the graffiti in Pompeii that they had legions of female admirers. One scrawled message declares a gladiator named Secellus the Suspirium Polarum, which translates to the sigh of the girls, or the girl's heartthrob. Roman satirists like Juvenal wrote scathingly about aristocratic ladies who became infatuated with gladiators, even running away with them. To be legally worthless, but culturally idolized, this was the strange, contradictory world the gladiator inhabited.
The lure of that celebrity status was powerful, but the lure of the prize money was, for many, even stronger. For a free man, driven to the Ludus by poverty, the financial rewards were a very real, if very dangerous, path to a better life. The amount a gladiator could earn varied enormously. A new, unknown fighter might receive a modest sum, but a proven champion, a star attraction at a major festival like the Games in Rome, could earn a fortune in a single afternoon. The prize for a single victory could easily exceed what a Roman legionary earned in an entire year of hard service. A handful of successful fights could set a man up for life. This is what the Octorati, the volunteers, dreamed of. They weren't just fighting for their lives, they were fighting for a future, for a way to escape the crushing poverty that was the reality for most people in the Roman world. However, for every story of a gladiator who grew wealthy, there were 1,000 stories that ended in the sand. The odds were stacked brutally against them. While it's a myth that every fight ended in death, the cumulative risk was enormous. A gladiator's career was, on average, brutally short. Even if he survived his fights, a bad wound could end his career, or the constant physical trauma could leave him broken. The dream of getting rich was real, but it was a dream that flickered brightly against a vast backdrop of injury, death, and despair.
For all the talk of fame and fortune, there was one prize that stood above all others. It was not a purse of gold or the adoration of the crowd. It was a simple object, made of wood, the rudis. This was the wooden practice sword used for training, but when awarded to a gladiator by the sponsor of the games, it became the ultimate symbol of freedom. It was a formal discharge from service, a release from the oath to be burned, bound, beaten, and killed. Receiving the rudis was the dream of every gladiator. It was not awarded lightly. A fighter typically had to survive the full length of his contract, usually 3 to 5 years, and distinguish himself with exceptional skill and bravery. It was a recognition that he had paid his dues in blood and had earned his life back. The ceremony was often a public one, taking place in the arena in front of the cheering crowd. For the spectators, it was a satisfying conclusion to a beloved champion's story. But for the man himself, we can only imagine the feeling. To hold that simple piece of wood in his hand, to feel its familiar weight, but to know that it no longer represented training for death, but the promise of a life. It meant he would never again have to walk out onto the sand and kill for another's entertainment. It meant he was, once again, a free man. Many gladiators so valued this symbol that they had it carved onto their tombstones, a permanent declaration that they were one of the few who had entered the world of the arena and had walked out, alive and whole.